The certified letter in my hands trembled as I read it for the third time. Final notice. Property seizure proceedings. 8 violations in 30 days, each one more ridiculous than the last. And now they wanted my home. The home I'd lived in for 15 years. The home where I'd raised my daughter after my husband died. My throat tightened as I stared at the HOA letterhead, that pompous eagle logo mocking me from the top of the page. Good day, everyone. I am grateful you are here with me. Before we begin, I would really love to know where you are watching from. Comment your city below. Now, let me tell you about something that changed my life forever. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of my townhouse, the morning sun already brutal against my skin at 8 a.m. My sandals slapped against the concrete pathway as I marched toward the HOA office, clutching the letter so hard it crumpled in my fist. Sweat beaded on my forehead. The manicured lawns stretched out on either side of me, each blade of grass precisely trimmed, each flower bed perfectly mulched, the kind of sterile perfection that made Riverside Estates the most sought-after community in the county. The HOA office sat at the community center like a miniature courthouse, all white columns and brass fixtures. I yanked the glass door open hard enough that it rattled in its frame. The Arctic blast of air conditioning hit me immediately. Behind the reception desk, a young woman I'd never seen before looked up from her computer screen, her eyes widening. I need to speak with Brooke Hamilton. Now. The receptionist's fingers froze over her keyboard. She glanced toward the hallway behind her, then back at me. Her hand reached slowly for the phone. Ms. Hamilton is in a meeting? I don't care if she's meeting with the Pope himself. I strode past the desk, ignoring the receptionist's protests. My heart hammered against my ribs as I moved down the hallway, checking each nameplate on the doors. Third door on the right. Brooke Hamilton, HOA President. I didn't knock. The door swung open under my palm, and there she sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, phone pressed to her ear, her platinum blonde hair styled in a sharp bob that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Brooke's eyes locked onto mine. She ended her call without saying goodbye, setting the phone down with deliberate slowness. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. She folded her hands on the desk, diamonds glinting on 3 fingers. I slammed the crumpled letter onto her desk. The papers scattered slightly, disturbing the perfect arrangement of her workspace. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Instead, she leaned back in her leather chair, the material creaking softly. Mrs. Cooper, I was expecting you. Property seizure? For a garden gnome that was supposedly visible from the street? Brooke reached for a manila folder, opening it with practiced precision. She pulled out a series of photographs, spreading them across the desk like playing cards. Each one showed my property from different angles. My mailbox at a supposedly incorrect angle, a trash can visible for 10 minutes past pickup time, a decorative wind chime that allegedly violated noise ordinances. The photos were time-stamped and dated, each one meticulously documented. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. The air conditioning hummed overhead, but I felt heat spreading up my neck. I grabbed the edge of her desk, leaning forward until I could see the tiny flecks of mascara clumped on her eyelashes. My breath came hard through my nostrils. The photographs beneath my fingertips showed timestamps. 6:47 a.m., 7:02 a.m., 5:15 p.m. Someone had been watching my house like a hawk circling prey. You've been stalking me. Brooke's manicured nail tapped one of the photos. Documenting violations. There's a difference. She reached into a drawer and pulled out another stack of papers, this one bound with a black clip. Section 4.2 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that lawn ornaments must not be visible from public thoroughfares. Section 7.8 addresses noise pollution. Section 12.3 covers. I snatched the document from her hands. The pages were thick, expensive paper stock. Yellow highlights marked at least 20 different sections, each one accompanied by handwritten notes in purple ink. My address appeared on every single page. I flipped through faster, my pulse hammering in my temples. Other addresses were scattered throughout, but mine dominated the margins like an obsession. The folder slipped from my grip, papers cascading across the polished floor. I dropped to my knees, gathering them up. My fingers trembled as I tried to straighten the pages. One photograph showed me taking out my trash at dawn, still in my bathrobe. Another captured me watering my roses on a Sunday morning. A third showed my car parked at what she'd marked as 2.3 inches over property line. Brooke's heels clicked around the desk. She stood over me, her shadow falling across the scattered documentation. I looked up from the floor, still clutching photographs in both hands. This is harassment. This is enforcement. She extended her hand, palm up, waiting for me to return her papers. I stood instead, keeping the documents pressed against my chest. My knees popped, a reminder of my age that I felt like a small defeat in that moment. Behind Brooke, the office window overlooked the community pool. Two women lounged on deck chairs, drinks in hand, their laughter filtering through the glass. Neither of them had received letters threatening property seizure. I moved toward the window, forcing Brooke to turn away from her position of power. Outside, sprinklers misted the perfectly manicured lawn. A golf cart puttered past, driven by a man in khaki shorts who waved at someone off-screen. Everything looked pristine, orchestrated, controlled. How many other homeowners have you done this to? Brooke crossed her arms, her bracelet jangling softly. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked back to her desk and tapped her keyboard, waking up her computer screen. The monitor glowed with a spreadsheet, rows and columns of data that I couldn't read from my position by the window. I strode back to the desk, circling around to see what she was looking at. Brooke tried to minimize the window, but I was faster. My hand shot out, gripping her wrist before she could click the mouse. Her skin felt cold under my palm. The spreadsheet showed addresses. Next to each one, a color-coded status: green, yellow, red. My address blazed red with bold text. Priority enforcement. Pending board approval for seizure proceedings. I scanned the other entries. Mrs. Patterson on Elm Street, yellow. Warning issued, garden height violation. The Rodriguez family on Oak, green, compliant. 11 other addresses showed red status. Every single one belonged to families I knew personally. I released Brooke's wrist. She rubbed the spot where my fingers had been, her jaw clenched tight. All minorities, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Every red address. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Cooper. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, thumbs flying across the screen. The camera clicked twice, 3 times, capturing the spreadsheet before Brooke could react. She lunged for my phone, but I stepped back, holding it high above my head. The office door flew open behind me. A man in a security uniform filled the doorway, his radio crackling with static. His name tag read Davis, and his hand rested on the pepper spray canister at his belt. Brooke must have pressed a silent alarm under her desk. Everything all right, Ms. Hamilton? I lowered my phone slowly, sliding it into my jacket pocket. The security guard's eyes tracked the movement, his fingers drumming against the canister. Behind him, the hallway stretched empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Mrs. Cooper was just leaving, Brooke said, her voice steady now. She smoothed her blazer with both hands, erasing invisible wrinkles. I didn't move. My feet stayed planted on the beige carpet, weight balanced forward on my toes. Davis stepped into the office, his boots making soft thuds against the floor. The door remained open behind him, a rectangle of harsh light spilling across the threshold. "I have documentation of discrimination," I said, patting my pocket where the phone rested. "A systematic pattern targeting minority homeowners in this community." Brooke's face remained expressionless, but her fingers curled into fists at her sides. She reached for the desk phone, lifting the receiver to her ear. 3 quick beeps echoed through the speaker as she dialed. "Mr. Chen, we have a situation in the main office," she said into the phone. "Yes, right away." My stomach tightened. Gerald Chen served as the HOA board chairman, a retired attorney who'd moved into the neighborhood 5 years ago. I'd met him twice at community meetings. A tall man with silver-rimmed glasses who spoke in measured tones and never smiled. He lived in the largest house on Maple Drive, the one with the pristine hedges cut into perfect geometric shapes. Davis moved to block the doorway completely, his broad shoulders filling the frame. I calculated the distance, maybe 6 feet between us. He stood a full head taller than me, his uniform crisp and pressed. The radio on his shoulder crackled again, dispatching someone to a gate malfunction at the south entrance. Footsteps approached from the hallway, quick and purposeful. Gerald Chen appeared behind Davis, his gray suit immaculate despite the late afternoon hour. He adjusted his glasses, studying me through the lenses. "Jessica?" he said, nodding once. "I understand there's been some confusion about your violations." "No confusion," I replied. My hand remained near my pocket, fingers brushing the phone's outline through the fabric. "I have evidence of discriminatory practices." "That spreadsheet shows every minority homeowner being targeted with false violations while your white residents receive compliance ratings." Gerald entered the office, gesturing for Davis to step aside. The security guard moved but remained close, his presence a physical warning. Gerald positioned himself beside Brooke's desk, his hands clasped behind his back. The office suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing inward. "Strong accusations require strong evidence," Gerald said. "I hope you understand the legal implications of what you're suggesting." The words hung between us, weighted with threat. I straightened my spine, meeting his gaze through those silver-rimmed glasses. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my breathing steady and slow. "I have photographs, time-stamped, from your official HOA database." Brooke's face paled. She looked at Gerald, then back at her computer screen where the spreadsheet still glowed. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. "That's proprietary information," Gerald said. "Obtained without authorization." "It's evidence of civil rights violations," I countered. My voice came out stronger than I felt inside. "The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race in any aspect of property management." Gerald removed his glasses, pulling a cloth from his pocket to clean the lenses. The gesture seemed casual, practiced, but his jaw muscles flexed with tension. He held the glasses up to the light, inspecting them before replacing them on his nose. "Davis, please escort Mrs. Cooper from the premises," he said. The security guard stepped forward, reaching for my elbow. I jerked away before his fingers made contact, moving toward the door on my own. My shoes squeaked against the tile as I crossed the threshold into the hallway. Davis followed close behind, his breathing audible in the confined space. The corridor stretched before me, doors lining both sides with numbered plaques. My legs carried me forward, each step measured and deliberate. Behind me, Brooke's office door clicked shut. The lock engaged with a metallic snap that echoed off the walls. I pushed through the main entrance doors, sunlight hitting my face like a wall of heat. The parking lot stretched before me, asphalt shimmering in the afternoon glare. My car sat in the far corner, a blue sedan coated in pollen and dust. Behind me, Davis's footsteps stopped at the threshold. He wouldn't follow me beyond the building. My hands shook as I fumbled with my keys. The metal slipped between my sweaty fingers twice before I managed to unlock the door. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather scorching through my blouse. The steering wheel burned under my palms. I cranked the ignition and sat there, engine running, air conditioning, blasting hot air that gradually turned cool. The folder lay on the passenger seat where I'd left it that morning. Insurance papers, property deeds, correspondence dating back 3 years, everything meticulously organized in plastic sleeves. I opened it now, flipping through pages I'd memorized. Yellow highlighter marked every citation, every fine, every violation notice. 47 in total. My neighbors, the white ones, had an average of 2. A black SUV pulled into the lot, tires crunching over loose gravel. It parked 3 spaces from mine, and a woman emerged wearing oversized sunglasses and a crisp white pantsuit. She carried a leather briefcase and walked with the purposeful stride of someone who belonged here. The woman disappeared into the building without glancing my direction. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Diane's number. My attorney had been handling discrimination cases for 20 years. We'd met at a community center fundraiser, bonded over stories of neighborhood harassment that sounded too similar to be coincidence. My finger hovered over the call button. The phone felt heavy, solid, real. Instead, I opened my Photos app. The images I'd shown Brooke filled the screen. Spreadsheet columns, resident names, violation codes. I'd taken them 3 nights ago during the board meeting while pretending to check messages. Nobody watched the old black woman scrolling her phone. Nobody suspected I'd gained access to Brooke's computer login through a sticky note carelessly left under her keyboard during last month's gathering. A text message popped up from an unknown number. The words made my stomach clench. "Stop making accusations or face legal action. This is your final warning." I read it twice, then screenshot the message before it could disappear. My thumb moved across the screen, forwarding it to Diane, along with 3 of the spreadsheet photos. The whoosh sound of the sent message felt like dropping a grenade. Movement in my rearview mirror caught my attention. Gerald emerged from the building, phone pressed to his ear. He paced near the entrance, gesturing with his free hand. Even from this distance, his agitation showed in the rigid set of his shoulders, the quick, sharp movements. He turned toward my car, and our eyes met across the parking lot. I shifted into reverse and backed out of the space. My tires squealed slightly as I accelerated toward the exit. Gerald lowered his phone, watching me leave. In the mirror, I saw him raise it again, speaking rapidly to whoever was on the line. The drive home took 12 minutes through tree-lined streets where every house looked pristine. Manicured lawns, fresh paint, American flags hanging from porches. My townhouse sat at the end of Maple Court, the only unit with a notice taped to the door. I'd removed 4 similar notices this week alone. This one was neon orange, impossible to miss. Violation notice? In bold black letters across the top. I ripped it down before reading the contents. The paper crumpled in my fist as I unlocked the door and stepped into the cool darkness of my entryway. The notice accused me of unauthorized landscaping modifications. I smoothed it flat on the kitchen counter, reading the details. Apparently, the lavender plants I'd added to the front bed violated HOA aesthetic guidelines. Never mind that Sandra 3 doors down had installed an entire rock garden last month without any complaints. My phone buzzed. Diane's name flashed on the screen. "Those photos are exactly what we need," she said when I answered. But Jessica, you need to be careful. If they know you have this information, they threatened me. I interrupted. I forwarded her the text message. Just now. Silence stretched across the line. I could hear her breathing, the faint click of her keyboard. File a police report. Tonight. And don't engage with any HOA officials without witnesses present. I hung up and stared at the violation notice. My hand reached for it, fingers tracing the printed text. Then I photographed it, adding it to an album that now contained 63 images of harassment. Each one dated, location tagged, saved to 3 separate cloud accounts. A car door slammed outside. I moved to the window, peering through the blinds. Gerald stood on my driveway, arms crossed, staring at my front door. My pulse hammered against my temples. I watched Gerald's reflection in the window glass, distorted by the angle and the late afternoon sun. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, then turned toward his sedan. The driver's door hung open. Someone else sat in the passenger seat, but the glare made identification impossible. I moved away from the window and grabbed my phone, opening the camera app. My fingers trembled as I positioned myself near the front door's side light, angling the lens to capture the driveway without being obvious. 3 clicks. 4. The passenger door opened. A woman emerged, tall and angular, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun. She wore a gray business suit despite the heat. Gerald gestured toward my house. The woman nodded, pulling a leather portfolio from under her arm. They walked side by side up my driveway, their shoes crunching on the gravel I'd spread last week. Another violation, probably. The stones were too large, or the wrong color, or not pre-approved. The doorbell rang. I counted to 10, then 20. Let them wait. My phone stayed in my hand, recording app activated, red dot pulsing in the corner of the screen. I tucked it into my cardigan pocket with the microphone exposed. The doorbell rang again. Gerald's shadow darkened the frosted glass panel beside my door. "Miss Cooper, we know you're home." His voice carried through the door. "Your car's in the garage, and we saw you at the window." I unlocked the deadbolt, but left the security chain engaged. The door opened 3 inches. Gerald's face appeared in the gap, his expression a calculated blend of concern and authority. The woman stood behind him, portfolio clutched against her chest. "What do you want?" "This is Monica Thorne from our legal counsel." Gerald's hand pressed against the doorframe. "We need to discuss several urgent matters regarding your property." I kept my body positioned to block any view of my interior. Monica stepped forward, extending a business card through the gap. I didn't take it. "You can mail any legal documents to my address," I said. "This would be easier if we could speak inside." Monica's voice was smooth, practiced. "We're here to help resolve these violations before they escalate to fines." My free hand gripped the door edge. The wood felt solid, anchoring. Gerald's fingers drummed against the frame, a rhythmic tapping that set my teeth on edge. "I'm not letting you into my home." Gerald's jaw tightened. A vein pulsed at his temple. He withdrew his hand and pulled out his phone, swiping through screens with aggressive jabs. Monica opened her portfolio, extracting a thick document bound with brass fasteners. "Sign this acknowledgement that you've been informed of the violations," Monica said. "Or we proceed with the formal hearing process." I examined the document through the gap. Dense legal text covered multiple pages. My name appeared in bold at the top, followed by a list of alleged infractions: unauthorized landscaping, unapproved exterior modifications, failure to maintain aesthetic standards. The list continued for 2 full pages. I'm not signing anything without my attorney present. Monica's expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened around the portfolio. Gerald stepped closer, his shoe crossing the threshold. I pushed the door against the chain, the metal links rattling. "Remove your foot." He didn't move. Instead, he leaned in, his breath fogging the glass. I could smell coffee and something sharper. Anger, maybe. Desperation. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." His words came out tight, controlled. "Just cooperate, and we can work something out." I slammed the door. The chain held, stopping it 3 inches from Gerald's face. He jerked backward, stumbling into Monica. She caught his elbow, steadying him, papers scattering across my front porch. Her carefully neutral expression cracked, revealing something cold underneath. Through the gap, I watched them scramble to collect the documents. Gerald's face had gone crimson. He straightened, brushing dirt from one knee, then looked directly at the door. "You have 72 hours to respond to these violations," he said. "After that, we're filing for immediate sanctions." Their footsteps retreated. Car doors slammed in sequence. I waited until the engine sound faded before releasing the chain and stepping onto the porch. 3 documents remained, caught against the brick planter by the wind. I photographed them in place, then collected each one with careful fingers, already planning my next call to Diane. The papers detailed financial penalties totaling $18,000. My hands shook as I spread the documents across the dining room table. The numbers blurred together. $18,000 in fines, accumulated over violations I'd never committed. 3 citations for unauthorized exterior modifications dated last week. I'd been in bed with the flu, hadn't even taken out my trash. The 4th page stopped me cold. A lien notice. They were claiming authority to place a lien on my house if I didn't pay within 30 days. My chest tightened, breath coming in short gasps. I gripped the table edge, wood grain pressing into my palms, and forced myself to count backwards from 10. The kitchen clock showed 4:47 p.m. Diane's office closed at 5. I lunged for my phone, nearly knocking over yesterday's coffee mug. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried her cell. Same result. My thumb hovered over the redial button before I forced myself to set the phone down. Through the front window, movement caught my eye. A white pickup truck idled 3 houses down, the same one I'd seen twice this week. Dark, tinted windows obscured the driver. I moved closer to the glass, careful to stay behind the curtain. The truck didn't move, didn't park, just sat there, engine running, exhaust curling in the cooling evening air. My doorbell rang. Every muscle in my body went rigid. The truck remained motionless down the street. I approached the door sideways, keeping my back to the wall, and checked the peephole. A young woman stood on my porch, maybe 30, with a messenger bag slung across her chest and a camera hanging around her neck. She rang again, then knocked. 3 sharp raps that made me flinch. "Mrs. Cooper?" Her voice carried through the door. "I'm with Channel 7 News. We'd like to ask you some questions about your HOA dispute." Ice flooded my veins. I stepped back from the door, my hip connecting with the hall table. The impact sent my key bowl spinning, coins scattering across hardwood. The reporter's shadow shifted in the peephole's fisheye view. She knocked again, harder this time. "We've received documents suggesting financial irregularities in your homeowners association. Your name appears on several—" "I have nothing to say." The words came out strangled. I cleared my throat, tried again. "Please leave my property." She didn't move. I watched her silhouette reach for something. The camera. Through the peephole, I saw the lens swing up, pointing at my door, at my house number, at the wreath I'd hung last Christmas and never taken down. The shutter clicked rapidly. 5 shots, 10, 15. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I let it ring out. Immediately, it buzzed again. A text message this time, then another, and another. The screen filled with notifications, all unknown numbers, all with attached images. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. A photo of my house. Taken from the street, late afternoon light, unmistakably today. The second image showed me at my mailbox yesterday morning, still in my bathrobe. The third captured me through my kitchen window last night, washing dishes. Whoever took that shot had been standing in my backyard. The phone slipped from my fingers. It hit the floor with a crack, screen splintering in a starburst pattern. The reporter's knocking had stopped, but when I checked the peephole again, she was still there. Now she was on her phone, speaking to someone, gesturing at my door. The white pickup truck rolled forward, stopping directly in front of my house. My lungs felt too small. I backed away from the door, down the hall, into the kitchen. The back door. I needed to check the back door. My feet carried me forward even as my brain screamed at me to call someone, anyone. The deadbolt was still engaged. I tested the handle twice, then moved to the window overlooking my small backyard. A man stood by my fence. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He had his phone out, angled toward my house, finger moving across the screen. Taking photos or video, I couldn't tell which. When he lowered the device, I saw his face. Gerald's son. I'd seen him at one HOA meeting, standing in the back, arms crossed. My stomach lurched. I stumbled to the sink, gripping the cold porcelain, fighting nausea. They were surrounding me, documenting me. Building some kind of case that existed only in Gerald's diseased imagination, and I was trapped in my own house while they did it. The landline rang. That old rotary phone I'd kept purely for nostalgia, mounted on the kitchen wall. It rang again, the bell sharp and insistent. I stared at it, watching it vibrate with each ring. On the 7th ring, I lifted the receiver. Yes? Heavy breathing. Then a click. My knees buckled. I slid down the cabinet, phone receiver dangling above me, the dial tone droning. Outside, car doors slammed, engines started. But I couldn't move, couldn't do anything except sit on my kitchen floor while my carefully maintained world crumbled around me. Current block 7. The dial tone became a shriek. I hauled myself up and slammed the receiver back onto the cradle, my palms stinging from the impact. The kitchen clock read 10:47 p.m., Tuesday night bleeding into Wednesday morning. I'd lost 3 hours sitting on that floor, paralyzed. I moved to the living room on unsteady legs, keeping away from windows. The house felt different now, violated, exposed. Every shadow held potential observers. Every creak might be footsteps on my porch. I grabbed my cell phone from the coffee table and scrolled to my lawyer's number. Randall Chen. I'd hired him 2 months ago when the violations started escalating. My thumb hovered over the call button. But what would I say? That someone stood in my yard? That I received a silent phone call? Gerald had orchestrated this carefully. Nothing actionable, nothing prosecutable. Just relentless psychological pressure designed to break me. The phone buzzed in my hand. Text message from an unknown number. My heart hammered as I opened it. A photo of my car in my driveway. Timestamp 2 minutes ago. Below it, typed in lowercase. Nice vehicle. Would be a shame if something happened. My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. I lurched to the front window, keeping to the side, and peered through a gap in the curtains. My silver Toyota sat undisturbed in the driveway, gleaming under the streetlight. No one visible nearby. But they'd been there, Recently, close enough to photograph my car with crystal clarity. I backed away from the window and sank onto the couch. My body felt heavy, compressed, as if gravity had intensified. The walls seemed to lean inward. I pulled my knees to my chest, making myself small, and tried to think through the fog of exhaustion and terror. The doorbell rang, sharp, insistent. I froze, didn't breathe, didn't move. It rang again, 3 times in rapid succession. I crept to the door, looked through the peephole. A woman stood on my porch, late 30s, blonde hair in a sleek ponytail, wearing business casual despite the late hour. She held up a badge. "Ms. Cooper, I'm Detective Morrison with the County Sheriff's Office. Your neighbor called in a welfare check." I sagged against the door. Relief and suspicion warred in my chest. "Which neighbor?" The question burned, but I couldn't ask through 3 inches of solid oak. My fingers fumbled with the locks. Chain, deadbolt, door handle. I opened it 6 inches, keeping my body behind the door. "May I come in?" "Which neighbor called?" The words scraped out of my dry throat. "A Mr. Gerald Chen. He said he's concerned about erratic behavior. Lights on at odd hours, what he described as paranoid activities." Her tone was professional, neutral, but I saw the assessment in her eyes. She was cataloging me. Disheveled clothes, probably wild eyes, defensive posture. The trap closed. If I refused entry, I appeared unstable. If I let her in, Gerald would know his tactics were working, would know he'd forced law enforcement into my home based on fabricated concerns. I opened the door wider. "Come in." She stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the living room. I saw it through her eyes, papers scattered across the coffee table, printed copies of every violation notice, photos I'd taken documenting the pristine condition of my property, evidence of my own surveillance, my own paranoia. Exactly what Gerald wanted her to see. "Ms. Cooper, are you doing okay? Mr. Chen mentioned you've been under some stress lately." "I'm fine." I forced my spine straight, shoulders back. "The HOA President has been harassing me with false violations. I've been documenting everything for legal purposes." She nodded slowly, her expression carefully blank. "I understand property disputes can be stressful. Have you been sleeping? Eating regular meals?" The questions felt like accusations. I pressed my fingernails into my palms, using pain to anchor myself. "Detective, I appreciate the welfare check, but as you can see, I'm fine. Gerald Chen has been waging a campaign against me for months. This call is part of that pattern." "Has he threatened you directly?" "No, nothing direct, nothing actionable." My voice cracked on the last word. She pulled out a business card, set it on the coffee table. "If you feel threatened or unsafe, call us immediately. In the meantime, I'd recommend keeping your doors locked. Maybe talking to someone about the stress." Talking to someone. Code for mental health evaluation, another weapon in Gerald's arsenal. I walked her to the door, maintained my composure until her vehicle pulled away. Then I locked up, chain, deadbolt, door handle, and returned to the couch. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "How was your visit?" They'd been watching, waiting, documenting my response to their orchestrated wellness check. I hurled the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracking in a spiderweb pattern. Story block 8 of 10. I spent 3 days inside, curtains drawn, watching the street through gaps in the blinds. Cars passed, neighbors walked dogs, everything normal, everything surveillance. The cracked phone sat on the coffee table, silenced but still breathing threats through its shattered screen. On the 4th morning, I broke. The walls pressed inward. The air tasted stale. I needed supplies, sunlight, proof I still existed in the world beyond these four walls. I grabbed my bag, checked 3 times that I had my documentation folder, and stepped outside. The heat hit like a physical wall. August in Phoenix turned concrete into griddles, made breathing feel like inhaling from an oven. I walked to my car, keys already positioned between my fingers. The tires looked intact. No visible damage. I circled the vehicle anyway, checking for fresh scratches, new dents, anything Gerald could weaponize into another violation notice. The Honda started without protest. I backed out carefully, hyper-aware of every inch between my bumper and the cars lining the street. At the stop sign, I checked mirrors, blind spots, counted to 3 before proceeding. Everything by the book. Everything documented in muscle memory. The grocery store parking lot sprawled half-empty in the weekday morning heat. I chose a spot under a dying mesquite tree, shade and visibility both. Inside, the AC and fluorescent lights made everything feel unreal, like walking through television static. I grabbed a cart, its wheel wobbling with each rotation, and started down the produce aisle. Halfway through examining tomatoes, I felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. I turned slowly, scanning faces. An elderly man studied avocados. 2 young women laughed over their phones. A mother negotiated with a toddler about cookie purchases. No one looked at me directly, but the sensation persisted. I abandoned the tomatoes and moved toward the dairy section. The feeling followed. My pulse accelerated. Sweat beaded despite the aggressive air conditioning. I turned down a random aisle, paper products, cleaning supplies, and stopped abruptly, pretending to examine dish soap while using the reflective bottles to watch behind me. A figure rounded the corner 30 feet back. Male. Average height. Baseball cap pulled low. He stopped at a display of paper towels, but his body orientation remained fixed on my position. Not shopping, tracking. My hands trembled as I set down the soap. The cart felt simultaneously necessary as cover and burdensome as anchor. I left it and walked quickly toward the main aisle, then cut left toward the front of the store. Behind me, footsteps accelerated. Not running, but no longer pretending casualness. I passed the pharmacy, the bakery, the customer service desk. The automatic doors ahead promised escape. 20 feet, 15, 10. I pushed through into the blast furnace heat and sprinted toward my car. The bag bounced against my hip. Keys scratched my palm. The wobbling cart sound echoed in my ears. No, actual footsteps on asphalt behind me. I reached the Honda and fumbled with the door lock. My hands shook so badly I couldn't fit the key. The footsteps grew louder. I risked a glance back. The baseball cap figure closed the distance, 20 feet away, now 15. His face remained shadowed, but his posture radiated purpose. Mrs. Cooper. The voice stopped me, not threatening, almost gentle. I turned fully, back pressed against the car door, keys held out like a weapon. He stopped 10 feet away, hands visible at his sides, younger than expected, maybe 30. The baseball cap revealed sandy hair, a nervous expression. He pulled out a phone, held it screen out toward me. I have video, he said, from my security camera. You're HOA President. You need to see this. My breath came in short gasps. Heat radiated from the metal at my back. Who are you? Trevor Moss. I live 4 houses down from you. Greenhouse, corner lot. He took one small step closer, phone still extended. I've been watching what he does to you. The late-night visits, the tampering. I have it all recorded. The parking lot shimmered in the heat. A car drove past, bass thumping. Someone's cart rattled over a speed bump. Trevor stood motionless, phone screen bright with frozen video, offering either salvation or the most elaborate trap Gerald had engineered yet. I reached for the phone with trembling fingers. The screen showed my front yard in grainy night vision green. A timestamp glowed in the corner. 3 nights ago, 2:47 a.m. A figure moved across the frame, deliberate and methodical. Even in the pixelated footage, I recognized Gerald's distinctive gait, the way he favored his right leg after his knee surgery last year. My stomach clenched as I watched him bend near my mailbox, doing something I couldn't quite make out. Then he moved to the side yard, disappearing from view. The video jumped to another angle. Trevor must have multiple cameras. This one showed Gerald crouching by my garden fence, pulling out sections of the decorative border stones I'd installed last spring. He arranged them in a pile on the grass, then took several photos with his phone before replacing them haphazardly. "Keep watching," Trevor said quietly. The next clip showed Gerald approaching my trash bins on collection morning. He lifted the recycling lid, dropped something inside, then snapped more photos. The timestamp read 6:15 a.m., 30 minutes before the trucks arrived, an hour before I'd wake up. Heat flooded through my chest, different from the Arizona sun. This was rage, pure and clarifying. Every violation letter, every fine, every condescending email about my repeated failures to maintain community standards, all manufactured. All lies documented with evidence he'd created himself. "There's more," Trevor said. He swiped to another video. "From last week." This footage showed Gerald in my backyard at night. My hands went cold despite the heat. He'd trespassed, walked right up to my patio, and scattered what looked like cigarette butts across the concrete. I'd never smoked a day in my life. 3 days later, I'd received a violation notice for improper disposal of tobacco waste, creating aesthetic concerns. I thrust the phone back at Trevor, afraid I might drop it. "Why didn't you come forward before?" "I wasn't sure at first. Thought maybe it was legitimate HOA business." He pocketed the phone, rubbed the back of his neck. "Then I saw the pattern. Always at night. Always when you weren't home. I started saving everything." A semi-truck rumbled past on the adjacent highway. The vibration traveled through the asphalt into my legs. I thought about the lawyer's fee, $5,000 as a retainer. I thought about the mediator's suggestion that I apologize and pay the accumulated fines to move forward constructively. I thought about my daughter's voice on the phone last week, telling me to just sell the house, that no property was worth this stress. "I need copies," I said. "Everything you have." Trevor pulled out a thumb drive from his pocket, held it out. "Already done, organized by date. I also wrote a statement about what I observed, the timing, the frequency, everything." I took the drive, closed my fist around it, the plastic edge dug into my palm, solid and real. "Thank you." He nodded, shifted his weight. "My mom dealt with something similar in her neighborhood. Different state, different situation, but the same kind of targeted harassment." His jaw tightened. "Nobody helped her. She ended up moving." I swore I wouldn't let that happen to someone else if I could prevent it. Back in my car, air conditioning blasting against my face, I pulled out my phone. My hands still shook, but my mind had gone crystal clear. I called Attorney Rodriguez, the one whose consultation I'd canceled last month when I couldn't afford her rates. "I have video evidence," I said when she answered. "Multiple instances of the HOA President manufacturing violations, trespassing, property tampering, all documented with timestamps." Her tone shifted immediately. "Can you come in today?" I drove straight to her office, a converted house in an older neighborhood with actual trees providing shade. The thumb drive felt heavy in my purse. Inside, Rodriguez's assistant, a young woman with red cat-eye glasses, offered me water in a real glass, not a disposable cup. Small kindness, but it steadied my nerves. Rodriguez reviewed the videos on her laptop, her expression unchanging except for a slight tightening around her eyes. She made notes in quick shorthand, paused, and replayed certain sections. The office smelled like coffee and old books. A fan oscillated in the corner, rustling papers weighted down with smooth river stones. "This is remarkably thorough documentation," she said finally. "Not just evidence of harassment, but potentially criminal trespassing, fraud, abuse of authority." She looked up at me, closed the laptop. "Mr. Gerald Chen has exposed himself and the HOA to significant liability." Hearing his full name spoken aloud in that context made something shift in my chest. For 18 months, Gerald had been this looming presence, this authority figure who controlled my daily peace. Now, he was just a man who'd committed crimes on camera. "What happens next?" I asked. Rodriguez opened a drawer, pulled out a legal pad. "We file an injunction first thing tomorrow morning. Restraining order against Gerald, demanding his immediate removal from the HOA board pending investigation. We'll also file a civil suit for damages, emotional distress, legal fees, property devaluation from the harassment." She clicked her pen. "And I'm obligated to report the potential criminal activity to the county attorney's office." I left her office as the sun began its descent, painting the sky orange and purple. The heat had broken slightly. I drove home through familiar streets, past the park where I used to take my grandchildren, past the library where I'd researched tenant rights and HOA regulations late into countless evenings. Block 1010. The morning sun streams through my kitchen window, catching the crystal hummingbird feeder I hung 6 months ago. I watch 3 ruby-throated visitors hover and dart, their wings beating so fast they blur into invisibility. The coffee maker gurgles its final notes, filling the air with dark, roasted warmth. My garden has exploded with color since spring arrived. I kneel in the black earth, working compost around the base of my new rose bushes, 4 varieties I planted in defiance and celebration. The soil feels cool between my fingers. Earthworms wriggle away from my trowel, and I guide them gently aside rather than slice through their bodies. The scent of fresh mulch and blooming lavender wraps around me like a benediction. Across the street, new neighbors moved in last month. A young couple with twin toddlers who shriek with laughter in their backyard each evening. Yesterday, they brought me homemade banana bread, still warm, wrapped in a checkered cloth. The woman, her name is Patricia, asked if I knew anything about the previous owners. I'd told her only that they'd moved suddenly, left no forwarding address. Some truths don't need full explanation. Gerald's house sold at auction after the criminal charges were filed. Fraud, trespassing, criminal harassment. The county attorney had been thorough, almost gleeful in prosecuting someone who'd abused a position of community trust. I'd watched from my living room window as moving trucks emptied his belongings, as his wife drove away alone in their sedan, her face invisible behind dark sunglasses. The new HOA president is a retired teacher named Marcus, a quiet man who sends monthly newsletters about community events and rarely mentions violations. He knocked on my door 3 weeks after taking office, apologized for everything that had happened under previous leadership. I'd accepted his words with a nod, offered him sweet tea on my porch. We'd sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood kids ride bikes through puddles left by afternoon rain. My granddaughter visits every Sunday now. She's 7, obsessed with butterflies and dinosaurs in equal measure. We plant milkweed together for the monarchs, dig for fossils in the garden beds. Last week she found a perfect arrowhead, probably 100 years old, buried beneath my tomato plants. Her squeal of joy had been so pure, it brought tears to my eyes. The settlement money from the lawsuit sits in my savings account, untouched, except for the portion I donated to the local legal aid clinic. They help people like me, people targeted by those with temporary authority and permanent meanness. Rodriguez had tried to refuse the donation, but I'd insisted. Some victories mean nothing if they aren't shared forward. I finish with the roses, stand slowly, feeling the pleasant ache in my knees that comes from honest work. My lower back protests slightly. I stretch, feeling vertebrae pop and realign. The sun has climbed higher now, warming the air to that perfect temperature between cool and hot. A mockingbird runs through its repertoire in the oak tree, cycling through dozens of stolen songs. Inside, I shower away the garden dirt, dress in comfortable linen. My calendar shows a lunch date with 3 women from church, the ones who'd stood beside me during the worst months, who'd brought casseroles and courage in equal measure. We meet monthly now, have become the kind of friends who share silence as easily as words. The drive downtown takes me past the courthouse where I'd testified at Gerald's hearing. The building looks smaller now, less imposing. Just brick and glass and the machinery of justice grinding slowly but inevitably forward. I don't think about him often anymore. When I do, it's with something closer to pity than anger. He'd had so little in his life that harassing a neighbor had become his purpose, his passion. What a small, sad existence that must have been. At the restaurant, my friends wave from a corner booth. Sunlight pours through tall windows. The smell of fresh bread and grilling vegetables fills the space. We order salads and sandwiches, share stories about grandchildren and garden pests and the new community theater production. Normal life, sweet and unremarkable. "You look peaceful," one friend tells me, squeezing my hand across the table. I smile, nod. Peace had been hard-won, fought for with documentation and determination, and the stubborn refusal to be driven from my home. But yes, I'd found it. In my garden, in my quiet mornings, in the simple act of existing without fear. That evening, I sit on my porch swing as fireflies begin their mating dance across the lawn. The air smells like fresh-cut grass and approaching rain. My neighbors' twins chase each other through sprinklers, their laughter high and bright. Patricia waves from her driveway, and I wave back. The street feels different now. Lighter somehow, as if Gerald's departure had lifted some invisible weight from the entire block. People linger outside longer, chatting across property lines. The couple 2 houses down installed a little free library, painted cheerful yellow. I donated 3 boxes of books, including the legal texts I no longer needed. Thunder rumbles distant. I finish my tea, go inside before the rain arrives. My house smells like the lemon cookies I'd baked this afternoon. The television plays softly, a nature documentary about migration patterns. I settle into my reading chair, open a mystery novel I've been savoring slowly, making last. This is my life now. Ordinary, peaceful, mine. No cameras hidden in bushes. No falsified violation notices. No angry confrontations or sleepless nights spent documenting every interaction. Just the quiet rhythm of days unfolding one into another. Each one a gift I'd almost lost, but fought to keep. The rain begins, soft at first, then building to a steady drumming on the roof. I read until my eyes grow heavy, then climb the stairs to bed. Tomorrow I'll water the garden if the rain doesn't. Maybe work on the guest bedroom I'm redecorating. Small projects, simple pleasures. The life I'd always deserved, finally mine to live without interference or fear. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.